Hey guys, alright, just before the show starts, I wanted to let you guys know that my fight against cancel culture is still happening. Please go to the description below. There's a link titled Support My Fight Against Cancel Culture. If you want to help my fight, please consider giving a bit of a donation. All the information's in that link. With that being said, enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Talk. I don't usually do streams on a Saturday, but I had a bit of internet problems on Thursday, and we were supposed to, was it Thursday or Wednesday? Wednesday. And we had to reschedule. So my guest today, see, I'm not used to doing it in the day. I was gonna say my guest tonight. My guest today is Liechen Strydom, and she is. I'm gonna let her explain what it is she does because I don't want to miss. I don't want to say something incorrect. So, but I think it's a very interesting job that she does. It's noble and honorable, and I very much wanted to have this conversation with her. Now, before I continue and completely let you give yourself an introduction, I do want to say very briefly that the topic tonight or today will focus a lot on human trafficking. So I don't know if there's going to be anything horrific, but for those of you who may have sensitive ears, be warned. But other than that, Lishan, take it away.
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for having me today. Okay, so so what it is I do is I'm an admitted advocate in the High Court of South Africa, and I started Liberation Legal Consulting last year. And what I do is we specialize in counter human trafficking, specifically within the various business sectors of South Africa. So yes, that is in short basically what I do on a day-to-day basis.
So what exactly does that mean, though? Like, for someone who doesn't like, okay, that's like, okay, that sounds cool, but what exactly does that mean?
Okay, so um, if we look at what human trafficking is, okay, I think let's perhaps start off with that. So in South Africa, we do have legislation that's specific to uh, trafficking in persons, basically. And if we look at the definition, there are three elements in the definition of what trafficking is. So it's an act, a means, and a purpose. So the act being transporting, harboring, recruitment, buying, leasing, selling, those types of actions. And then with the second element being the means, abuse of vulnerability, deception, fraud, kidnapping, abduction, those types of means. And then with the last element being the purpose, that is for any form of exploitation. So when we get to the form of exploitation, so we've got for sexual exploitation, organ trafficking, forced marriages. We've got forced labor. So that's where Liberation Legal Consulting comes in. So we focus on the labor side of human trafficking, and unfortunately, not only in South Africa but globally, forced labor forms part of the business sectors as well. And in South Africa, with us being a source, transit, and destination country, and that also makes us high risk for trafficking in persons. So what we then do is we assist businesses to make sure that they've got all the necessary policies, HR policies in place within their business, assist them to critically assess their supply chains, also to make sure that their suppliers are not possibly making use of forced labor, and then we help them to implement an anti-modern slavery policy within their business practices, so that they're not only complying with South African legislation, but also that it goes a step further, but that they're also complying with international legislation and best practice globally, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how many? Obviously, you wouldn't have started this business if there wasn't a need for it. Which I mean, okay. So I have to be careful what I say here. It's a good thing that you're doing, but at the same time, it's almost like if there's a need for it, it's like what a what are the problems that exist in order for this need to be there? And again, it's a good thing that you are doing what you're doing. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, how bad is it? If that makes sense.
Yes, no, it definitely does. And that is not just for South Africa. My answer, it's basically global. So human trafficking, it's been something that's actually been there for very, very long. I mean, if we look historically, slavery used to be legal, and then it wasn't legal anymore, and unfortunately, the practice of slavery continued on, and in today, it's a case of where there's a demand, a supply will follow. So if we look, for instance, at pornography, okay, let's look at that. So there's a demand for that sexual gratification, so to speak. But unfortunately, because of that demand that has been created, that a supply is following, and the supply that's following is the exploitation of not only women but men and children as well. So that's basically why there is human trafficking. From the labor side in businesses, for instance, if we look, for all businesses, it's always about the bottom line is profit. So, but that's a very crucial factor in a business. I mean, if you don't make profit, why do you have a business? So with that, what happens is, for that product or service to be delivered with the least overheads, somewhere something's got to give, and unfortunately that comes from either not wages being paid, or and the employees being exploited with extremely long hours. If we, for instance, consider debt bondage, where their salaries are so small, so they end up having to take out loans from their employers. So the loans that they're getting, they have to work back, and it just keeps on piling up. So they continue to work, but the debt isn't being repaid. So then we get instances of debt bondage. So it's an entire cycle that just continues at the end of the day.
Debt bondage. That's an interesting term. Yeah. The okay. So before I get into that, there was something you mentioned earlier that you mentioned children in pornography. A very delicate topic to talk about, but could you enlighten us a little bit more about? Yeah, like I don't think people. I mean, you know, I think in today's society, porn is one of those things where it's like there's some people that are open about it and say they watch it and they see nothing wrong with it, and then there's the ones that condemn it and say it's a seedy world behind the curtain, if I can put it that way. But children, you wouldn't expect to hear both of those go together. What do you know about that?
Okay, as I mentioned, my field is mostly focused on the labor side, but um, from some of our network partners, and so in our network in South Africa. Um, and also, if I can refer to one of your previous streams that you've done with Yanni, when you looked at the dark web
Yeah.
and red rooms, for instance, that is really happening. And if I can, for instance, refer to Pornhub, earlier this year there was a big thing around Pornhub because a couple of cases had come to light where children were being sexually abused, and those videos were uploaded to Pornhub, with the perpetrators actually receiving payment for those videos. Um, so, and again, it all boils down to a demand and a supply that's following. So, I mean, and we can get into a very long discussion around the sexual exploitation side of things. But unfortunately, children are are being exploited. If we look in other parts of the world where it's parents who are actually exploiting children online, um, and the videos being recorded and it's uploaded on the dark web and so forth. So that is unfortunately something that is happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because when Yanni and I made that dark web, it was amazing to see how some people are like red rooms aren't real, and there was this article that was passed to us, Wiki something, well, not WikiLeaks or Wikipedia. It was Wiki Myth or Wiki Rumors. I don't know, something along those lines, where someone had written an article saying that red rooms are actually a scam on the dark web. That the reason why it's so high priced is because people are trying to scam the sick people. So they know that sick people are interested in this content. So they say, okay, cool, we want like X amount of Bitcoin, and then they pay the Bitcoin, but then they never get access to the room. It's fake. It's that was their thing. And I wouldn't say that that's completely wrong. I mean, I would imagine that someone would have tried to capitalize and scam, absolutely. But that doesn't discount red rooms, though. Like, that's like maybe 2 out of 5 are like that, that are scams, and the other three are real. Would you say, have you seen any proof that they exist besides obviously what Yanni and I did?
No, I don't go into that side of things to that degree. It's based on discussions who I've had that I've had with partners in the field, and from their investigations and so forth. But as you mentioned, definitely, scams are, they do happen. It's just opportunistic. If they see, but okay, here they can make a couple of bucks, there will definitely be a scam. If we, for instance, look, from the scam side, for instance, with the jobs being advertised, quite often those job adverts are scam adverts, but you do get instances where those adverts are not scams, but that it is actually a way of recruiting a potential victim. Um, but yes, most of this is, we'd always think, human trafficking, and it's, and think about it as we see on Hollywood movies, Liam Neeson's Taken movies.
I will
We
find
always,
you, and I will.
yes.
Yeah,
We
I can't do Liam
always
Neeson
refer to
impersonation.
that.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, quite often it's not so public that it is being done. It's more behind the scenes that all of this is put into motion. It's not so public.
Yeah, I think that would make it. I think how is that's actually a good question or topic to bring up. So obviously, in doing what you do, how difficult is it to convince the public that these kind of heinous things happen? Have you found a bit of a backlash or a bit of a resistance? Like people are like, ah, man, that's not really happening, blah blah blah. Do you get that?
Not so much from the sexual exploitation side, because I think that has been something where a lot of awareness has been raised up to now. Quite often within businesses, businesses would say no, but there's no, forced labor still happening. I mean, in South Africa, we've got good labor legislation, and business would think, oh no, but we've got no risks for trafficking within our business, for instance. And then when you start to have a discussion with that business, for instance, then they say, okay, but they give loans to their employees if they come to them, but they need X amount of money, they want to go and do something. Then they give that loan and just say, okay, no, work it back, or you can pay it back, but there's no arrangement made on how it would be worked back or paid back, the time frame, all of that. And then I'm like, okay, but that's a risk for your business, because it can start to lead to a slippery slope where, if it's not regulated correctly, then it could end up being debt bondage. And then, it'll be like almost that aha moment where they start to see, okay, but wait, here is a red flag. Or, for instance, if they make use of recruitment companies, so then I will ask them, okay, have you checked your, recruitment company who you work through? Are they charging a fee to potential employees for them, before their CV is actually accepted? And, they have to pay for criminal checks or admin costs or anything like that. Then they're like, no, well, they haven't asked those questions. So then I would say to them, okay, but that's another risk, because as soon as you start to charge a potential employee any fee for recruitment, then that again starts to go into the debt bondage side. Um, or if you, for instance, have employees where you say to them, let's say, for instance, they are irregular migrants, or irregular foreign migrants. So they're in South Africa, and their workers' visas, for instance, might not be legal at that moment. So then saying to that employee, okay, but you have to work overtime this weekend. I'm not paying you for that, so that is illegal, because then that becomes forced labor, because it's an abuse of that person's vulnerability, because they are undocumented in South Africa. And as soon as I actually start to have these discussions with them, then after a while you can see, as they start to see all the various potential risks within their operations, then it's as if they have that aha moment, and they're like, okay, but wait, this is actually a reality. Um, Last year, for instance, there was a conviction on forced child labor in South Africa, and it wasn't in media. I actually, by accident, came across this one article where it was featured. So there's not a lot of awareness currently being raised on the labor side. So quite often, people would think, okay, labor exploitation is not really happening in South Africa. If someone wants to work and is willing to work for below minimum wage, then it's their decision.
Mm.
And unfortunately, it's not as cut and dry as that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird situation. This is how I understand the dynamics at the moment. South Africa is in a recession, been for some time now. We've been reduced even further than junk status. I don't know what that means. Garbage status. I don't know. Um, and so, the economy now after lockdown is not doing too good. I mean, yes, it's opened up a little bit, but there's a lot more unemployment now. People are struggling to find jobs. Clients, don't have money to pay normal prices. Everyone's been affected. Money is scarce. Does this create a breeding ground for this kind of for this human trafficking that you speak of, and obviously the debt bondage?
Bondage.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, unfortunately, that is a I can almost say perfect climate for the exploitation to flourish. It just brings us back to that vulnerability factor of people. Yesterday we had a discussion where, according to the global slavery index, it's where they take each country, and with all of their economic situation is taken into account, education, all of that is taken into account, and they work that data to see how vulnerable a person is to human trafficking. And in South Africa, that vulnerability factor is 54%.
54.
So yes, 54. So yes, definitely, with everything that has happened especially with the last couple of months in South Africa, the vulnerability of so many people has increased. If I have to think back, it was right at the beginning of lockdown. I think we were about a month and a half into lockdown, and I had started to receive queries from attorneys who were asking, okay, so their client had approached them with the situation where the employer was saying to the employees, okay, but we can't pay you the full your full normal salary, like most businesses had to do, because they had to close down for a certain period. So then the businesses or the employers would say to the employees, so we will be paying you a reduced salary for this month, but it will be made up from two components. So the first component would have been the UIF TERS that everyone could claim, and then the outstanding amount wasn't going to be salaries, but it was a loan to the employees that they had to work back. And I have heard of about 3 or 4 employers that were taking that approach. So in that situation where everyone was, had an increased vulnerability, businesses included, unfortunately, that ripple effect was coming through to the employees. So their vulnerability factor just further increased because of practices like that happening. And if we look at, I mean, how many people had just lost their jobs the past few months. So we've got so many more South Africans who are now, looking for work, because they have to support their families. They've got children who they have to support, and perpetrators are unfortunately exploiting that, where they will say to them, well, I will give you a job. And they paint this fantastic picture about what this job opportunity would be and what the salary will be. And so the person will start, and they will see, okay, but it's not exactly as it was said. And with all the various methods that they do use, then it becomes too late. So they will start with like breadcrumbs, I can almost say. And because people are so strapped for cash, they will work for a reduced salary, even if it's below minimum wage, and that is then just further exploited over time.
Yeah, people are desperate. Not that it's okay. Absolutely not. Yeah, this debt bondage. Basically, in a nutshell, a company will basically get you to, well, not maybe not intentionally all the time, but because they maybe unintentionally, just to be on the safe side here, manage to or accidentally get their employees to be stuck with that job for a very long time until it's paid back. And then I guess they kind of abuse their power, and therefore that's kind of a slave work. You could see the modern day slavery, I guess you could put it that way.
Yes.
All right, yeah, that's quite a problem. I never thought of it that way. I mean, like I often hear of like, for example, would this be considered debt bondage? If I am fresh out of college or university, no, not fresh out of school. All right, so I've done my matric. I've applied for a job in whatever sector. It doesn't matter. I don't know. Let's say I wanted to be a lawyer, so I go. No, that won't work. Because some business, the point I'm trying to make is some businesses will pay for your college or a course. Graphic design, for example. So I go to a graphic design company and I say, okay, I'm out of school. This is how my computer skills are thus far. I'd like to work for you. And then we come to a deal and they say, cool, we need you though to study a bit more graphic design. So we'll pay for you to go to college and study as you work at the same time, but then you got to pay us back. So is that also a form of debt bondage?
No, well, it could. Each situation has to be taken case by case. But in a situation like that, for instance, what they will do is say, okay, the course is, let's say, over a year, a 1 year period, so you will have to work back a year after you have completed the course. So that will not be regarded as debt bondage because there is agreement in place, and the amount that's being basically loaned to the employee for the studies is paid back by the end of that year that needs to be worked back. It would be debt bondage if, let's say, for instance, the period in which it has to be worked back is not what's the English word now? My brain wants to think in Afrikaans, but it's not. It's too long than what it should have been. And during that time, let's say, for instance, the employee is fined as well. So that's added to that amount. And then something else happened and that gets added to that amount. So that amount never really gets worked off.
I see. Okay.
So that's when the debt bondage will come in. And if the employee then says, okay, but I want to leave employment and go and work for another company, then they should be able to, then the employer would say, okay, you still owe, let's say, for instance, 10,000 Rand. Then the employee should have the opportunity to then pay back that 10,000 as a lump sum, or either within an agreement where a certain amount's paid back even after they leave employment or so. But if the employer then says, no, you are not allowed to leave at all until it has been worked back, then that person is being forced to
Yeah.
stay there. So then that will start to be a red flag of possible debt bondage, which would then be need to be investigated a little bit deeper around the specific situation.
Jeez.
If that makes better
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that does. Okay, cool. So now that we cleared that up, and what else in your line of work? Is there anything that's like shocked you? Have you had like a case that's like really like, wow, this is like next level slave trade kind of like, wow? Is there any been a case? You don't have to mention names or anything like that, but has maybe just lightly tell
100%.
us.
Yeah, I've had a few. Like I mentioned with last year's conviction on the child labor case, where the child who was exploited was 6 years old when all of this started. So
Six.
he was 6 years old, yes, and he was brought into the country, and for about almost four years, forced to work until it had come to light, and the perpetrator was arrested and pleaded guilty in the case.
What was the kid
Um,
doing? Like, what were they making? Like it was a sweatshop type of thing? Was he making Nike shoes? What were they making the kid do?
Working, domestic servitude, working in the house and garden. So that the
Wow.
child wasn't allowed to go to school or anything like that, and had to work at the house.
And you say they
So
brought the kid in, so like they kidnapped the kid, or did the parents like was it
no,
like a sale?
it was an arrangement between the mother and the perpetrator, where the mother wanted a better life for her child, and she had thought if the child would, come to South Africa, live here, where the child would have had more opportunities, that would have been better for the child, because the perpetrator was known to the family.
Oh wow.
And so it was with the parents' consent that the child was brought into South Africa to come and live with the perpetrator, and then in South Africa, that's when everything had changed, and it wasn't as was arranged
Yeah.
with the parents. So that unfortunately is what happens quite often, where the perpetrator is actually known to the victim. It's not always that it would be, a kidnapping and just, stopping next to the person, putting them into the car and driving off with them, for instance. It is a process through someone who they possibly know, and they would gain their trust, and from there the exploitation would start.
So what?
Then there was another.
Sorry,
Hmm?
just have a question here. With this story, the perpetrator, right? Okay, so they get a kid to do the domestic work and stuff like that. Was there anything more sinister happening? Because I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around why you would want a kid to do the work. You know, you could there's sweeps out. There's other ways of getting a domestic worker to come into your house. So I'm just questioning now. Was there anything more sinister happening?
In that specific case, no,
Okay.
nothing. It was nothing more sinister than the labor exploitation, but it's it's free labor. Um, so it's demand and supply. If you want something for free and it's readily available, then unfortunately that will be exploited. Yeah.
Sure. All right. So you were saying another case?
Yes, sorry. So, and another one, that came through to me, that I referred for further investigation, was an 8-year-old girl who had apparently been sold, by the mom to her mom's drug dealer to pay off the debt. Um,
Wow.
and that was one that had knocked me quite bad, and it's a situation of, you read so many stories and you hear so many cases, but each victim's story is horrific
Mm.
in their own story. So yeah.
How do you, with all these stories that you hear, um, are you okay? I mean, hats off to you for dealing with all these stories and dealing with all these situations. Because I mean, just those two stories alone, like I can't. I don't know what drives people to do that. And I mean, there's always going to be someone who's going to be like, yeah, but you know, the situation, and we got to take it's like we got to look at like the mother was on drugs and probably was fearing for her life. I don't know. I don't know that story. I don't know the ins and outs of that story. But at the end of the day, like regardless, it's wrong. I know that drug addicts don't think straight when they make deals or when they just in general. But yeah, I mean, regardless of all that, the fact is it happened, or these things are happening. So, like, seriously, are you okay? How do you deal with all this?
Um, I can almost say in the fortunate position where I don't work so much on the ground. I don't go in during raids. I'm not involved with that part of it. I think where some of my colleagues in our network organizations are more hands on. But it is difficult. You have to get to a point where you almost separate your work from your personal life, and you have to shut down certain emotions during if a specific case comes through to if someone phones me with something, I immediately have to switch off. I can almost say the I don't want to say the human side of me, but yeah, because you have to think theoretically, step by step. um, but while still doing that, keeping in mind that it is a person at the in the midst of all of this, and just making sure that everything that we do is for the benefit of that person, and to help them um, to be rescued, and to help them on their journey forward. um, so yes, it is difficult. I'm lucky enough. I've got a wonderful support system with my husband and my son and my family. And we, in our network, we're very fortunate. I've previously worked in law firms and within other sectors where the culture in the business was not always, it wasn't friendly, or it wasn't fantastic. And within our network, all the organizations working, we're really fortunate where it's a situation where if you're struggling emotionally with processing some of these cases, where you've got anyone on speed dial basically, and they'll be there for you just to listen, and just to have that shoulder to cry on.
Yeah,
So yes.
yeah, because that's very good because like I can imagine that some of these cases may like I mean, I okay, first let me address the super chat that came in from your brother Yanni, who says he says he gave 140 rand super chat saying, "No, my sister is not okay. She was born like this." Thank you, Yanni, for lightening up the mood. And thank you for the 140 rand super chat. I'll get to. He asked some questions earlier. I'll get to them in a moment. Um, I think like yeah, it's an emotional. It can be emotionally taxing, as someone has also mentioned. The other day, my sister-in-law, I think a month ago, gave birth to a new baby, to a baby girl. New addition to our.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Addition to the family, and I'm newly married as well, so we got married just before the lockdown, and it dawned on me during the lockdown, like just one day I was like, oh my word, I'm an uncle. Like I'm officially like an uncle. And now with the new addition to the family, I got to meet her I think 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and I'm looking at this innocent child, and I'm thinking if anyone freaking touches her, I will kill them. Like if anyone hurts them, I will go berserk. Like it's and I think that's where it becomes emotionally tasking, especially like when you hear things about children, and then as a yourself as a parent. I'm not a parent, but I can imagine like if that was my niece that got sold off, that can get quite emotional. So I'm glad to hear that you have support around you, and yeah, these are tough stories to hear.
And also, just what I always remind myself is, even though it might be feeling emotionally taxing to me at that stage, if I just for a moment put myself in their shoes, then it's nothing compared to the abuse that they had to endure,
Yeah,
sometimes for quite a number of years. Um, so then it just I just realized that I'm still okay. There's more important things to keep in mind in that situation than
yeah,
me just feeling, oh my goodness, this is
yeah,
it's a bit hard to hear or difficult to listen to, for instance.
yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah, all right. So let me get to some of the comments here. Let's see. Yanni asking Joe and Liechen, can Liechen share her view on the fact that Bekele is saying human traffic is a publicity, I think he meant publicity stunt in South Africa. Is that true? Did he say that?
There was an interview where he was interviewed around that. Um, yes, it's I don't agree. Our Although we don't have concrete data um, around human trafficking, not because an attempt hasn't been done, to gain the data, just because it's such a hidden crime. Um, but with even just there being one victim, it's one victim too many, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sure, I can't believe that guy said that. And he's the police minister. Jeez. Okay. Yanni also asking, in some cases, strippers have their passports kept by their employers. That's a question mark. And is that a form of debt bondage? Asking for a friend.
I love the hashtag asking for a friend. Yes, in our legislation in South Africa, which is the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act, there is a section specifically around possession, confiscation, destruction, tampering with, or anything like that with documents. So if the employer has taken the original documents, whether it's ID documents, passports, workers' visas, anything like that, that is a criminal offense. They are not allowed to do that, because what often happens with foreigners in a or where they work in another country, not only in South Africa but in other countries as well. Their documents, passports, workers' visas would be taken, if they have workers' visas, they will be taken. So they will be forced then to work for the employer. If they don't want to, then the employer will say to them, okay, but I've got your passport. So if authorities, Department of Home Affairs, for instance, would come here, you don't have your passport, so they will see you as an illegal foreigner. And so they do use those types of threats, or if the passport has expired or anything like that. So that is one of the methods used, to force them to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will have a chat to my brother, but if there is anyone who that is happening to, that is definitely an offence. The employer is not allowed to do that.
Mm.
And if they want to reach out to someone and to report it, we've got in South Africa, we've got the South African Human Trafficking Resource Hotline, and their number is 0800 222 777. I will post it in the comment section as well, so they can give them a call. It's a toll-free number. They're available 24/7, and all the call center agents are trained with everything related to counter human trafficking. So any reports can also be done anonymously if the person prefers that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that that existed, so it's good that you mentioned that. Um, all right. So I wanted to ask you as well, but I'm just going to check here. Okay, so Alamoth Cora, thank you for tuning in and watching, says, can we always leave the abuser, and should we? Yes, I guess. What's your advice on that?
Let me just quickly get it. So can they leave the abuser? Um, it's not always so easy for them to just leave the situation.
Yes.
It's quite often it's a psychological thing that is keeping them in that situation, whether it's Stockholm syndrome or trauma bonding, for instance, or it could even be where they juju instances of juju that has been used to keep them complacent
What's
without
juju?
talking.
Sorry, what's juju?
No problem. So juju is it's I think it's an African practice, but it's almost like a form of witchcraft, if I can explain it easiest like that. So there was a case that I heard of during last week where the victim. That was what the perpetrator had done to the victim. They would brand them or like make cuts on them or so, and it's like a ritual that's done to them, and then they would say, okay, so now I can hear anything you're saying, even if you're in another province. I can still hear what you're saying. So if you're gonna ask anyone for help or so, I'm gonna know about it. And where they have been mentally and psychologically so broken down that they take that for to be the truth. So they are too scared. And even 6 months after this specific victim had been rescued, she was not able to speak normally when she was talking about what she had gone through. She would only whisper because she was afraid that the perpetrator was going to hear what she's saying. So if the person is able to leave the situation, fantastic. If you've got a way to have an exit plan, so to speak, beforehand, if you can have a plan of action of what you're going to do, where you're going to go, so that in your mind, that's your emergency plan, so that when push comes to shove and you get the opportunity to do that, that you've already got that plan revised, and that is like almost second nature, that you can just act on that plan. Or they can reach out to the hotline, and the hotline will then immediately refer all the necessary information to the key stakeholders within that area, being task teams, rapid response task teams. So that will be made up of DSD, SAPs, Hawks, Home Affairs if need be. So all of them, and they will be able to assist that victim. Or even if it's just, reaching out to a friend, or someone that you can trust, and just saying to them, okay, well, this is the situation, or I need help.
Yeah. And you mentioned when we were off air, and you did touch on it earlier in the conversation. You mentioned that there's parties or other organizations that you are partners with or you work with. Would you mind naming a few for people who may need, maybe like we were talking about now, advice or somewhere to go, besides the hotline? What are some of the partners you work with that are very good that people can maybe follow and also support?
100%. So I can almost say umbrella organization in South Africa. They are called the National Freedom Network. You can catch them on Facebook. They've got a website and everything. So all of the organizations, civil society organizations in South Africa, fall under, as members of National Freedom Network. So if anyone would like to know anything more, they can have a look on NFN's website. They've got a resource tab there that's loaded with resources, research, interviews, clips, awareness clips, video clips that they can have a look at. Then we've got wonderful organizations working. Love Justice, for instance, they are a international organization also operating in South Africa. So they partnered with Cassie, with the Cassie app, for response, in emergency response, where they designed an app called the Freedom app, which is available on Android phones. So if you download it, it's free to use. You can have a chat with them if you suspect anyone being a victim of trafficking. If you want to do a survey, if you are possibly a victim of trafficking. And then it's also got the feature where it works through your location settings on your phone. So if you press the panic button, it immediately sends it through to the Cassie control room, and the nearest armed response in your area is then deployed to your location immediately.
Brilliant.
And it's completely free to use. So that's fantastic.
I
We've
noticed
got
you said,
A21.
sorry, I noticed you said that it's only for Android. Is there an iOS version for the Apple users?
They are. They are still. I mean, the app was only released, I think, about a month ago, so
Okay.
it's very very new. I've been using it for almost about 3 weeks now. Tried it out, works amazing. But their goal was also sort of to target the largest group of people to have it available to immediately, which I think was going to be Android users because it's Samsung and all the other phones as well. Yeah, so it's got a larger variety of smartphones that it covers than iOS at the moment. So for iPhone users, I think you'll have to just hold on a little bit at the moment.
And sorry, can you repeat the name of the app again?
Certainly, it's the Freedom app.
The
I will
Freedom app.
post it
Okay.
on the chat as well. It's a fantastic app. Yes, and like I said, it's free to use.
Yeah.
And you can add information like a photo, your address, your vehicle details, and they can track you. So if they need to know, if they see that you're moving, then they already know what your vehicle details are. So that information can be given through to the closest responder to you, and they immediately know who they're looking out for, what vehicle they're looking out for as well. But also on the National Freedom Network website, there is a member tab. So if they go on that, they can have immediate access to all the member organizations in our network.
Great. I'm going to actually ask your brother, Yanni, if you don't mind, sending me a WhatsApp with the number, the name of the app, and also the website that your sisters just mentioned, so that I can include it in the description of the video. I'll put it up there after we're done here, and yeah, then that way people who are watching this in the future, you should be able to find all that information in the description below. So yeah, look, we got 7 minutes left. It was very quick. I just want to say, okay, let's. I do want you to also mention again what it is, or how do I put this? You, you, if people want to reach you, what are the type of people, like do you only work with businesses, or do you also listen to individuals, or what is it, like, who, if someone wants to use your services, who can reach out to you, sorry?
Well, anyone is welcome to reach out to me, whether they are a business, an employee, or just anyone from civil society. They're welcome to reach out to me. I do training to businesses around anti-modern slavery. Um, I also do community talks and awareness talks. So anyone is welcome to reach out to me if they've got just any suspicions or they just want to find out anything more. They're welcome to reach out to me through my business's Facebook page, Liberation Legal Consulting. All my details, contact details, email address, everything is on there. And if it is a situation where I myself can't help, or it's not within my area in which I operate, then I can refer it to the hotline, to the provincial task team in that area, or any of the stakeholders who will be able to assist.
Fantastic. And I want to bring up a comment here from Zisha Otto, who says, let me just bring it up quickly. There are several industries who hold a person's passport. This is not always malicious, but instead a matter of dangerous working situations. Clearly not relevant to this chat, but uh, cases of holding a passport, and they also wanted to say they mean no disrespect. Comments?
Yes, definitely. There are certain sectors. Let's say, for instance, agriculture, where it's quite isolated. So they just want them, or like working on a mining site. They're staying there as well. Want their documents to be kept safe. The most important thing to remember is that the employee needs to have free access to those original documents. So keeping it in a office locked in a safe where the employee doesn't have free access anytime they require their documents, that is a contravention. So my advice will be that certain measures be put into place just to ensure that the documents can be kept safe, but that the employees still have free access to them when needed. I see, just sorry, a little bit further down in the chat, there was another question. Can this be used by farmers? So I'm assuming they're referring to the app. Yes, it can. The app is operational anywhere in South Africa, as long as at the moment you've got cell phone reception and your location is switched on your Android phone, then it will work.
Yeah, I think it can be used by anyone. Anyone who has an Android phone is allowed to use it. There's no um, separation in terms of like industry or anything like that. Anybody who is working and has an Android phone can use the app. Yeah, they also said there is a, because I see they said can this be used by farmers, and then they also continued and said there is a political narrative that the farm workers are being abused. Can you ask your guest if the app can be used by the farm workers? So we just answered that. All right.
Yes, I just quickly want to mention, yes, in one of the features of the app is like a quick survey. So they can go in where there are questions that just a couple of questions to ask, that the app asks, that you can just say yes or no, or this is the situation, and that information is then also given through, that if there is a suspected case, that it can be followed up on.
Fantastic. I think that app is going to help get to the bottom of certain things. That's great. And yeah, so he continues to say we should let the farm workers to use it then, so we can debunk these rumors with facts. Agreed. And I think that's one of the nice things about this app. I think we should encourage people who are working to download it. Um, Obviously, there's a system to it. I'm guessing one would be a little bit worried that someone could abuse it and maybe create a false claim, but I'm assuming that the app has its way of um, determining whether or not it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, there will be an investigation, and then obviously it will be the facts will come out. Correct?
Mm.
Okay.
Definitely, definitely, yes. And also with it being secure, yes, the Cassie has been operational for quite a while across South Africa. So with this application having or being partnered with the Cap or Cassie software ultimately, that it also enjoys that security offered by Cassie app.
Fantastic. Glad to hear that. Because yeah, you were talking earlier about how you give it your license plate number and all that stuff, and I was a little bit worried, like, oh man, they know it everywhere you go. Um, but yeah, it's good to know that they respect privacy. Cool, Liechen. We are at the hour mark. So what I usually do with the guests is, if there's, is there any final words that you want to give the audience in closing?
Sure. I think we actually still have so much to talk about, but just in short, basically, if anyone wants to know anything, contact the hotline for further information. Have a look on the National Freedom Network's website. Know the red flags to look out for, and if you ever suspect that you or someone you know might be in an unsafe situation where it could possibly be trafficking, reach out to the hotline and immediately report it. Rather be safe than sorry at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Look, if there's more to talk about, I'm more than happy to have you on the show again. We'll arrange and maybe like choose a specific topic with the stuff that you still want to talk about. And then we can expand on it and talk about it a bit more. I think raising awareness for this stuff is a very good thing. And thank you so much for your time on a Saturday afternoon to chat to me about
Thank you for
this.
having me.
It was a very interesting conversation, and I'm so glad we had it. So I want to say from my side as well, thank you so much for the amazing work that you do. I feel that it's very important, the work that you do, raising awareness for this stuff, fighting back against modern day slavery and human trafficking. It's a serious, serious problem that we have, not just in South Africa, as you mentioned, but in the rest of the world. And you're very. It's a very noble cause, and yeah, I hope that people will support you and support the partners that you mentioned. Um, so yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this was Liechen Strydom. Please go check her out. I will leave the links to all her stuff and the other partners and organizations that she mentioned in the description below. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Please give this video a like, and please definitely share this video. I will be back on Monday evening, so enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until then, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers. Hey guys, so if you enjoyed the show, please consider giving it a like and a share. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you're new to my channel. And if you really enjoyed the content, feel free to join and become a member. Don't forget about my fight against cancel culture. That's in the link in the description below. Support my fight against cancel culture. Go to that link and all the information is there. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching.